Hi, Mark Rabin here. I'm going to do another episode of Lean Blog Audio. This is episode 310. You can find a link to the articles that I'm going to reference here by going to leanblog.org/audio 310. So I haven't done one of these in a while, but I ended up writing a blog post today. I was planning on taking this week off basically, but I saw something in the news I thought was really timely and I wanted to address it in the hope that it would help other hospitals in this time of vaccination against COVID-19 and how important that is. So for those of you watching on YouTube, I am going to do a screen share and I'm going to walk through on these blog posts. So again, this is at leanblog.org. The headline of the blog post says, "Blaming human error isn't an excuse for wasting 500 doses of COVID vaccine." So during this vaccination phase of the COVID-19 pandemic, almost every article that I've seen about the vaccine and its distribution mentions the need to not waste precious doses. Now, there are many different opportunities for error with the different vaccines. So some of them aren't stored properly at the correct temperature. The vaccine degrades and it ends up getting wasted, or maybe worse, it would get injected and then give a false promise of effectiveness. So good process design, and these are lessons I learned as an engineer, means being proactive and thinking about what could go wrong and then designing the process in a way that prevents errors or mistakes. The ideal would be error proofing that makes it impossible to make a mistake. Or if we can't do that, we could make it more apparent that a mistake has been made. For example, there might be a temperature sensitive label on a vaccine bottle that would let you know if it's been out of the correct storage temperature for too long of a time. A countermeasure like this might prevent the mistake of using expired vaccine. But how can we prevent the storage problem and the waste of the vaccine to begin with? So there was an article that caught my attention. The headline of that article read, "Wisconsin hospital tosses 500 doses of COVID-19 vaccine due to human error." And here's that article from news8000.com. I've linked to it again if you go to leanblog.org/audio 310. So before getting into the article, my instinct, I think it's born from experience. I immediately had a reaction where I thought after reading this headline that says, again, due to, quote, human error. I don't like blaming human error as a root cause. I mean, yes, we are fallible. Humans are fallible. I tweeted this article yesterday, and my first attempt at that tweet demonstrated inadvertently that exact same point. I typed infallible instead of fallible. I had to delete and repost the tweet that had the correct thought. That tweet said, "Humans are indeed fallible. That's why you need good processes. Don't just shrug your shoulders at human error." There was a quote in the article, and I'll come back to this. Human error, which is going to happen in any process, anytime there is a human involved, things like that can happen. Well, because we are imperfect, we can't expect employees to be perfect. We should be driven to design a process that makes it harder or impossible for us to make a mistake. In the absence of that, perhaps the headline could read as follows: "Wisconsin hospital tosses 500 doses of COVID-19 vaccine due to, quote, bad process." Or maybe it could read, "Wisconsin hospital tosses 500 doses of COVID-19 vaccine due to, quote, poor planning." Or it could read, "Wisconsin hospital tosses 500 doses of COVID-19 vaccine due to, quote, bad management." That might seem a little harsh. I mean, do those headlines make you cringe? Does it seem too harsh? Well, that was my reaction to the original headline that blamed human error. So let's look at the news story a bit. And there was admittedly not a ton of detail in the article, but it said, Advocate Aurora Health said 50 vials containing 500 doses of the Moderna vaccine were removed from a pharmacy refrigerator overnight, Saturday, December 26th, at the Aurora Medical Center in Grafton. So being removed wasn't necessarily the problem. That most certainly could have been avoided. But it said, again, going back to the article, Officials say as a result of unintended human error, the vials were not placed in the refrigerator after temporarily being removed to access other items. So again, not placed back into the refrigerator. Now, it said in that quote, unintended human error. Well, by definition, human error cases, these are unintended. I'm not sure that modifier is needed. If it were intentional human error, that would really be more like sabotage instead of error. So this scenario begs a number of questions, and maybe here we have the benefit of hindsight, although I'd argue these things could and should have been anticipated. Was education and communication good enough regarding the need to keep the vaccine cold? Was this training given to everybody who could have accessed the refrigerator? Could the vaccine have been kept in its own dedicated cold storage? Could the refrigerator have been better organized or properly sized so that other needed items could be accessed without needing to remove the vaccine? Was there a proper checklist or standardized work in place to help ensure that the vaccine was put back if it had to be moved? Was there proper and effective supervision in place? So the pharmacy CEO, Hashim Zabak, said, "This is the kind of error that can happen regardless of the size of the operation." Well, you can have good process or bad process in an organization of any size, large, medium, or small. Good process doesn't cost anything really other than time and effort. I don't really understand what the size of the operation has to do with this error. But the CEO continued, human error, which is going to happen in any process. Anytime there is a human involved, things like that can happen. So there's the quote again. So saying that human error is going to happen in a way is self-defeating, self-fulfilling prophecy. I mean, saying things like that can happen doesn't mean that they must happen. When leaders shrug off human error, instead of looking in the mirror and thinking about systems and processes and their role as leaders, errors like this don't get resolved and they don't get prevented in the future. If human error is not preventable, I mean, does that mean we would then have to remove all the humans from the work? I would say, well, that's unlikely. That's not the only way to solve this. So how can other hospitals and pharmacies learn from what happened here so the problem isn't repeated elsewhere? Does everybody really have to learn from their own mistakes? There was another article, and I'll give credit to WISN 12 News for this article. An Aurora Health System spokesman said, "This was the result of unintended human error, and we have there's that phrase again, and we have used it as an opportunity to review and remind team members about our process." Well, I've written about this a lot before. Putting up a warning sign that says, like, "Don't forget to put the vaccine back in the fridge," is probably not an effective countermeasure. Healthcare, generally speaking, loves signs that say things like, "Be more careful," but we need more than that. In fact, I've created a whole website at bemorecareful.com that has examples of warning signs that are probably ineffective countermeasures. We need to do better than that. So in this article from WISN News, the reporter asked the Milwaukee County Medical Services Director, should all hospitals be reviewing their own procedures for the vaccine after seeing how a mistake like this could happen? And the Medical Services Director, Ben Weston, said, absolutely. All hospitals should be reviewing their policies and practices, and health departments and anybody else receiving the vaccine. It's a complicated process. So I hope that all hospitals will be proactive. I mean, how could this mistake happen in your organization? What can you do to prevent this? If you're reading this or listening to this or watching this and you work in healthcare, what can you do today to help prevent a similar mishap? On a more positive note, there was a different story in the news about a hospital being proactive. This comes from North Carolina, NBC News 14, the local station. Actually, this is, no, it's actually from Indiana. So there again, there again, I go proving my fallibility by stumbling over my explanation of a mistake. So I apologize. This is Indiana, not North Carolina. Again, the headline read, Deaconess officials make sure COVID-19 vaccines aren't wasted. And there's a quote from Brian Spencer, a pharmacy service line manager, who said, so we really have to look at the schedule for the following day to make sure we're pulling the right amount. We're labeling it with the correct expiration. We have to obviously do it very quickly. So we have a whole team in the pharmacy that's taking care of that. And then the report says, up to this point, Spencer tells us that no doses have gone to waste, and he's very pleased with how his team has managed the vaccine storage. So there's a whole team, and hopefully they have a well-defined process. I hope they keep up that to-date perfect track record of not wasting doses. And while I was searching Google News for other articles about vaccine problems, there was an article about a different type of vaccine article, a different type of error. There's my fallibility again. I'm not going to go back and edit. I'm just going to leave it there. My apologies. A different type of error that occurred in Germany, and this is courtesy of The Sun. The headline reads in British tabloid fashion, in all caps, jab blunder, and they call a needle, injection there. They call it a jab. Care home workers rushed to hospital after being, quote, overdosed with Pfizer COVID vaccine 5 times the recommended dose. So in the article, there's a little detail. It says, each vial contains 5 doses of the vaccine and are supposed to be diluted before use. Now, it doesn't say directly, but I think we can infer that people were given the full vial, undiluted. So, thankfully, as it turns out, this isn't likely to be a deadly error, but it's, in this case, again, more wasted vaccine. An administrator is quoted as saying, quote, this individual case is due to individual errors. Well, there they go again, blaming individuals instead of process. Somebody might say in response, but they should have known better. Well, again, we want to ask questions like, how effective was the training? How good was the supervision? How could this have been allowed to occur? How was this kind of error even possible? So questions like that, I think, help us get beyond just shrugging and feeling bad and apologizing and saying things like human error was to blame. I'll add another thought. If you're doing root cause analysis and you're asking why, and you get to a point where someone says, well, it's because of human error, here's my tip. Keep asking why. So again, thank you for checking out this episode of Lean Blog Audio. Again, you can find a link to the blog post and everything else in question here by going to leanblog.org/audio310. I want to wish you a happy new year. I want to wish you a healthy new year as things hopefully get better here going into 2021. Take care.